You know, I was quite taken recently whilst out in the woods with just how little colour there is at this time of year, but it is still a colourful scene. It's a uniform green, but it's not as saturated as you would get in the spring or the midsummer itself. And I think that gives opportunities to play a little bit with colour and to introduce it as a more subtle element to the composition. It adds something, I think, this time of year. Black and white can be quite a struggle, so that's why I've decided to come out today and try and attempt to capture the gentle mood of this landscape. Now, one thing a landscape like this demands, I think, is a slow approach. There's nothing super dramatic, and I don't need to rush around to get the best light because it is overcast today, and that suits my mood. And I actually find myself walking slowly and just padding backwards and forwards over the same ground for many minutes, just really taking it all in and just looking for the subtlety, if you like, to come through, just allowing it to come through. If I move too quickly, my head gets it gets out of sorts with the actual landscape. It doesn't suit this landscape to be thinking quickly. I think it takes a long time to appreciate just what's here. Now I've set the camera up looking at a jumble of dead trees and trunks with mosses growing on them. And in this chaos there is some symmetry, and I have to lead the eye through that frame. One of the things I'm really keen to do is exclude the sky though, because a bright sky at the top of the scene will again lift your eye up there, and I want you to come down into the scene, so I'm making sure there's a fine tracery of branches all the way around the main element, which is that magnificent trunk running through the centre with all those lovely mosses on it. Now this has actually come out better than I expected, although it did take some post-processing. I had to play down the brighter areas of sky so your eye would come down to the gnarly old tree trunk, and I also lightened the foreground where you've got the bracken and also that little bit of water on the left, but overall it is exactly the mood I'm going for at this time of year. Okay, I've come across a scene which is very two-dimensional in many respects, and I'm using a short telephoto setting on the zoom to render it such. I have the distant trees as a backdrop, and one of the trees has some very old autumnal colour on it from 6 months ago. And there's a small clearing, there's a bit of a pond there, which just allows a bit of a break from the monotony of the trees, and it also just sits below the tree with the dead leaves on it, which is what I was after as I was walking along the bank here. And the silver birch are just providing that nice backdrop of the sort of very strong verticals. Now, I've taken just 2 frames, one with the pond in the front, but I have also gone in a bit closer, probably, yes, a bit more of a telephoto setting, just to isolate the tree without any of the grasses, because I did like the juxtaposition of the silver birch with that very, very muted colour, which is very much the theme for today. Well, ultimately I went with my gut feeling, my first impression of the scene, and I did want that small pond there. The tighter crop removed that element, and I like the slightly off-centering of it underneath the remainder of that fall colour. Now, I did have to process this to take down the brightness of those foreground grasses. They were very, very white indeed, and also to tame the top and the edges of the frame somewhat, because I wanted you to focus in on that pond and on that dead tree showing some colour. It just broke up, as I said earlier, the monotony of the silver birch and gives the eye something to latch onto. Now I'm going to do something which I tell myself I need to do more of when I'm out and about, which is just take a bit of a time out have a snack, take in the landscape and think about what I want to shoot next. Think about the compositions I've already shot. Think about the mood and the atmosphere. I'm already noticing there are nettles and brambles around here in various states of decay with beautiful colours. I mean, they would make excellent subjects. So maybe half an hour sat here will benefit my eye, if you like, and improve my photographs and make me think more before I come out next time and have those preconceived ideas. Now, I have come across this incredible cherry blossom tree here. I don't know what it's doing in this forest. It stands out like a sore thumb. It actually looks fake, but I can't photograph it effectively at the moment. I've got the wrong light and yeah, I've got nothing to really set it against, but beautiful nonetheless. I know I've said it a couple of times on this trip, but I'm really enjoying the pace and the solitude once I got away from all the runners and the orienteers who are making their way around the forest today. I've come to a quieter area though. This is a flooded moss area where they're trying to recreate conditions that were prevalent in this forest years ago. It's getting a little bit tricky to navigate now along here. I may fall in. It would be hilarious, obviously. But what I like about here, apart from being devoid of human beings, is the vegetation. Plastic bottles as well, but look at that. The colours are just so vibrant and so, I don't know, they're so almost fake. Almost look like they've been pumped up in Photoshop, but this is a magnificent area if I can just manage to traverse it safely. I'm still very interested in these decaying nettles or brambles here, but the reason I've swerved shooting a few of the earlier ones, which you probably saw and look very photogenic, is because they were right on the main path, and there is a race going on today around the forest, so people are quite keen. Nice. Get there quickly, and they don't want me in the way. So if I set my tripod up, I think I'd be a bit of a nuisance and they'd probably get trampled underfoot. So I'm looking for something around here now which is off the beaten track, and hopefully I can set up and do a considered shot of. We'll see. Well, I'm pleased to say that after much searching in the forest and under this canopy, I have found something which the sort of mood I was looking for in terms of close-up and that more intimate shot, and it is of this beautiful tree with its bark. Now, I could spend all day trying to resolve the ideal composition with this, and it's actually taken me about half an hour previewing, working with different lenses, etc. And I have taken two frames with different focal lengths. I used the longer zoom at about 100 millimeters. And the shorter zoom at about 50 millimeters, and I had to focus stack because even with this relatively small micro four thirds sensor, there was just too much depth of field there to hold in the one shot. Now the tricky part was to make some sense of all these areas of light and dark within the bark. This is magnificent texture and material. It feels fantastic. It's so tactile, you know, you can go tree hugging. And I wanted to encompass enough of the white patches against the dark, such as the eye was focused in on a particular shape on the white patch, and I have found that here in this, which to me is almost like a human face. There's a little eye here, and I'll show you in close-up now. So this eye, if you like, and this is almost like the head and the hair falling down to like a body. It's like almost like a cave painting, something sort of I'm drawn to in nature. It's patterns which you know, it reminds me of man's input, but this surrounding area sets it off very nicely. It's very dark, but this area here, as you can see, there's quite a distance between the two, which is where my depth of field problems came in. So by using two different shots and combining them later in post-processing, I should be able to get the necessary depth of field. However, I have a feeling that maybe the single shot focusing on the eye, if you like, the head, and these receding into gentle out of focus areas may actually draw you into the composition more, but I do have that choice later in post-processing. Well, I did actually end up using the focus stacked images because the single shots just had too much blurring on the sides for my liking. Now this did turn out exactly how I liked it. Now I do like the subtle colour in there. I could return and shoot mono, and I do have an idea that this tree would make a good study with the Bronica, although obviously depth of field would be even more of a problem with that camera. For me, the Bronica and the square format is probably ideal for this detail sort of work, but I am pleased with the way it turned out, and there's a bit of subtle processing in there just to bring down the edges a little bit and to make the central figure, if you like, stand out. But I'd certainly like to do more of this type of work in the forest because the conditions were just ideal. So that's it, that's the shoot, and I've shot probably only about 10 or 12 frames in total, so could have managed with the Bronica in many ways. This is very economical shooting for digital, so I do hope you've enjoyed the video and you've enjoyed the images too, and I'll see you again on the next shoot.